Georgia looks like it's getting ready to execute a mentally disabled. The word at law is retarded, although more often than not, people consider that to be a slur. But that is the legal term. And Josh Marquis is a district attorney with Clatsop County, Oregon, past president of the Oregon District Attorneys Association. Are you the current DA there, sir?
I have been for 20 years, yes.
Okay. And the website is coastda.com. And Josh, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tom.
So you are, if I understand this correctly, you consider yourself a relatively progressive Democrat, and you're in favor of the death penalty.
I'm in favor of the death penalty in some cases, as are approximately, depending on how you ask the question, between 65 and 80% of all Americans. And interestingly, when you ask people their political persuasion, those people who describe themselves as liberals, it's about 62% of people who are self-described as liberals. The question is, are you for the death penalty ever, or are you for the death penalty generally? And frankly, you get different answers because,
sure.
A number of people, including people who, like me, think the death penalty is probably overused, not in the sense that there are, we believe, innocent people on death row, but frankly that some of the cases in some states, we in Oregon simply would not ask for the death penalty for what we refer to as a 7-Eleven murder, which is, I'm not trying to denigrate the crime, but when you have, some young people who go in with a gun, they rob a convenience mart, they panic, they shoot and kill the owner. That's a horrible crime, but absent something really awful, that generally should not warrant a death penalty.
Right. In your mind, the death penalty is reserved for people like Charlie Manson.
Well, Charlie Manson or Randy Guzik, who I've prosecuted no less than 3 times in 20 years. He has an IQ of 150, by the way, and he was a star student at Redmond High School, and he brutally planned and executed 2 lovely people. And there's never been any question about his guilt. We just keep having to retry the case over and over again.
Why?
So, but you're here, you want to talk about Mr. Hill, I believe.
Well, yeah, he kind of brought this issue up. The charge or the suggestion is that he's mentally retarded, using the legal term.
I know that people call that the R word, but frankly, in the context of the Atkins case, which was a U.S. Supreme Court case of about, I think, 6 years ago, which ruled that a person who was genuinely mentally retarded could not be executed.
Right.
The problem, of course, is then how do you define that? Generally speaking,
and the court left that to the states.
They did, and for example, Oregon, my state, and I think yours, has yet to come up with a clear definition, and not only a definition, but who makes the decision. In some states, for example, there's a preliminary hearing at which a judge takes expert testimony and makes a decision, and if he finds or she finds that the person who's facing the death penalty is in fact mentally retarded, then the death penalty is taken off the table. In other cases, like actually, interestingly, Mr. Atkins, the case who brought it was from Virginia, and after his case was overturned, the case went back for trial. A jury found that specifically that Mr. Atkins was not retarded and sentenced him to death again. The case got overturned on completely different grounds. So Georgia does have an unusual feature, which is they create what's called an affirmative defense, which is not as infrequent, which means the burden is shifted to the defendant. So in Georgia, a defendant who is otherwise deemed execution eligible must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's not retarded.
That he's not execution eligible, not that he's not guilty, but that he's not he's not mentally competent.
And one of the points I think that needs to be made is there is really no question about Warren Hill's factual guilt.
Right.
His lawyers haven't raised it. The sole issue is he in fact mentally incapable?
Right.
And our law has always intended, and I think I agree, it's simple decency, that you don't execute people who are either so insane they think they shot Hitler, not their wife, or they think they're squeezing a lemon instead of somebody's throat.
Right.
That's what we would call delusional or psychosis.
Well, here's my problem with the death penalty, and that is that most developed, mature democracies no longer have the death penalty.
Well, do you consider Japan and India a developed, mature democracy?
Well, India, I'm not sure of. Japan, certainly I do, and I realize that they have the death penalty there. But they're the exception that proves the rule, if anything. And my concern is, what about the killers of the killers? Would you be willing to personally execute the fellow that you prosecuted?
Yes. And I believe...
And you don't... now it seems to me like you'd almost have to be a sociopath not to have difficulty sleeping after taking another person's life, even if you feel it's justified.
Well, Tom, I have been a prosecutor for 30 years. I have the unusual experience of having also been a lead capital defense lawyer. So I've been on both sides of the table, which very few people have. And in my career, I've done a couple dozen murder cases. I have only had two people for whom I stood in front of juries and asked them to put them to death. And let's make no mistake, when I do that, my moral responsibility is undeniable. I am the prosecutor. I'm the person making that decision. And if that person were ever to be executed, I believe it would be my duty, not something I'm particularly looking forward to go to their execution. Now, you have to understand that I firmly believe that the man who's been sentenced to death unanimously by 4 Oregon juries, Mr. Guzik, will probably outlive me. But let's assume that was not the case. Let's assume that, in fact, he were to be executed. I would feel it my moral responsibility to be there. I would not find it a pleasant experience. But, and jurors, for example, a common defense argument is, can you live with yourselves knowing that you are in fact condemning someone to death?
Yeah, I would not be able to.
Well, and Tom, you've just basically sort of delineated it. If in fact, and there are my own parents, certainly my father, who was a refugee from Nazi Germany, who was a college professor, who fought as an infantryman in World War II, my father was against the death penalty, bitterly so, and he was very unhappy when he saw my name frequently quoted in the New York Times as a supporter of capital punishment. Now, my parents weren't religious. My mother's still alive, and she doesn't like the fact that, now, in other words, they have philosophical beliefs probably very similar to yours. Then there are people with religious beliefs. Even though the actual translation of the King James Bible from Greek is not "thou shalt not kill," it's "thou shalt not murder." There are many people, particularly in the Catholic faith, who believe the death penalty is wrong. If, in fact, you believe the death penalty is wrong, there is no amount of reform, no amount of carefulness, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we could use or apply that would make you okay with it.
But and that's true. And I look at, it's fairly clear right now that Rick Perry executed an innocent man, a year and a half ago.
Well, I know you're talking about the arson case involving Mr. Williams.
Yeah, and it's also fairly likely that George W. Bush executed at least one innocent man. I mean, this is there's that argument, and I realize that in many cases there's just no doubt about it. But still, it's like, do we as a society really want to be that brutal? You can look back. I paid a pilgrimage 4 years ago to the Nuremberg, Germany, which has particularly resonance for my family because I didn't know them because they were my great granduncles, but people in the camps, right,
in the concentration camps. And if you're a student of World War II and you look at the absolutely cosmic evil,
Josh, hold on for just a second. Hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We're talking with Josh Marquis, the District Attorney in Clatsop County, Oregon, about the death penalty. CoastDA.com is his website. Josh, hang on. Okay, Josh, welcome back. We had to go through that transition there, but I wanted to let you finish your thought.
No, I said, if you look at the Nuremberg War Tribunals, many of the people that were primarily responsible for literally planning the Holocaust, not just against Jews, against homosexuals, against dissidents, against intellectuals. Many of them never actually got their hands dirty. They didn't commit the executions, but they committed acts so evil, so offensive, that I think most civilized people, certainly at that time, believed that it was right to execute them. If, in fact, a person says, and this is my wife's like this, she'll say, well, I really don't like the death penalty. I'm uncomfortable with it for a number of reasons, but then she'll read a case about like that guy in Florida who on video abducted a young girl, tortured her and raped her. And then says, but, that guy, he deserves to die. Mm. Well, if someone like that takes that position, what that means is they are in favor of the death penalty. They're just highly discriminating about when they want it used.
Sure. Yeah. So I get all that, and I think what it ultimately comes down to is as you pointed out, that I'm not going to change your mind, you're not going to change my mind, and at some point
we have different basic philosophical beliefs.
That's correct. So the different baselines.
There's no amount of reform that I would be able to do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. I couldn't design anything in terms of making sure that. I mean, in Oregon, I am outspent 20-1 by indigent defense lawyers when I try a capital case.
Right.
I mean, if you commit aggravated murder in Oregon, you will get a lawyer that only a millionaire could otherwise afford. But even then, my guess is that you and probably many of your listeners would still say, no, absolutely not. I don't want the state killing anybody, and I don't want to be party to it.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that would be the position that I would take. And for a variety of reasons. One, I don't think it's a deterrent. And even if it is, I think the deterrent effect is so small that it's not worth the cost to society. Two, I think it brutalizes us as a society. Three, I'm asking somebody else to kill somebody on my behalf. And I'm not willing to do that. And if I'm not willing to pull the switch myself, now you're willing to pull the switch. So it's a different thing. And I respect that.
I wouldn't be asked to, but I have no doubt about what my moral culpability is.
Sure.
When I stand in front of a jury.
And four, if we're looking at punishment, I think that having somebody sit in a jail cell for 20 or 30 years is a more severe punishment than saying, okay, next week, lights are out.
Well, you just said something interesting. You said 20 or 30 years, because the most common argument against the death penalty is, wait a minute, we have an alternative, and that's life without parole.
Right.
The reality, however, is, and I've had this debate, I have debated this subject before the American Bar Association. I've appeared before the U.S. Senate 3 times. I've been at the European Parliament debating it. And I usually, and in fact, a very nice woman named Nadine Scrosson, who for many years was the president of the ACLU of the United States, we were debating on NPR, and I said, okay, let's assume for the moment, Nadine, that I'm willing to give up the death penalty. Will you agree, as the head of the ACLU, that life without parole does not violate the Eighth Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment? And she said, I can't do that. It's an ever-changing moral field. And
I would agree that it does not. I would agree that it does not violate that. So So I guess each one of us draws our lines, and this time we do have to bail the segment, Josh. But I think over time we'll see where our society lands on this. I respect your perspective, and I thank you for coming on and sharing it with us.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Josh. You can read all about it at his website, coastda.com.